If you think modern-day rebels are wild, wait until you hear about Diogenes of Sinope, a philosopher whose life was one outrageous event after another. Often called the craziest philosopher, Diogenes lived a life of defiance, wit, and absolute shamelessness. He was the original troll, centuries before social media existed, and his actions and words have gone down as some of the most insane moments in the history of philosophy. Diogenes was the founder of Cynicism, a school of thought that advocated for living simply, without material possessions or societal norms. And he took that idea to the extreme. He lived in a barrel, some say a large jar, in Athens, rejecting any form of comfort or luxury. He ate scraps from the market, begged for food, and slept wherever he wanted. He called himself a dog, embracing what he saw as a pure and shameless lifestyle. The term cynic actually comes from the Greek word for dog, a reference to Diogenes and his dog-like behavior. Diogenes had a sharp wit and wasn't afraid to use it against anyone, even Alexander the Great. When Alexander came to meet him and offered to grant him any wish, most would have asked for riches or power. But Diogenes simply replied, "Yes, stand out of my sunlight." The great conqueror, instead of being offended, was so impressed by Diogenes' disregard for wealth and status that he said to his friends, "If I were not Alexander, I would wish to be Diogenes." One of Diogenes' most famous and arguably most shocking moments was when he was caught masturbating in public. Instead of being embarrassed or apologizing, he boldly declared, "If only it were as easy to banish hunger by rubbing my stomach." This was his way of showing that natural needs should not be hidden, but embraced openly. He had no shame, and he wanted everyone to know it. Diogenes was a master of insults. When a man insulted him by calling him a dog, Diogenes got up and peed on the man's leg, saying, "If I am a dog, why are you surprised?" Another time, when he saw an archer repeatedly missing his target, Diogenes sat down in front of the target and exclaimed, "Behold, I have found the safest place on earth." His sharp tongue made him both feared and respected. He knew how to cut down his enemies with words better than anyone. Diogenes didn't just preach his philosophy, he lived it every day. He saw societal norms as hypocritical and actively tried to expose them. One day he walked through the marketplace in broad daylight carrying a lantern. When asked why, he replied, "I am looking for an honest man." The underlying message? Diogenes believed society was so corrupt that it was nearly impossible to find anyone genuinely virtuous. Diogenes despised the pursuit of wealth and status. One time he saw a wealthy man trying to teach his child about generosity by throwing breadcrumbs to sparrows. Diogenes threw the bread to the wealthy man instead and said, "You feed the birds, but the birds do not feed you." He wanted people to understand that accumulating wealth and power was futile, and that living a simple, self-sufficient life was the path to happiness. Diogenes didn't fear punishment or authority. Once he was captured by pirates and sold into slavery. When asked what he was good at, he replied, "Governing men. Sell me to a man who needs a master." Diogenes' new master actually ended up freeing him, and he spent the rest of his life mentoring his former captor's sons, living comfortably on the estate. It was as if Diogenes turned even his enslavement into a platform for spreading his philosophy. Diogenes didn't hold back when it came to family matters either. Once he saw the son of a promiscuous woman throwing stones into a crowd. Diogenes walked up to the boy and said, "Be careful, young man, you might hit your father." It was his way of mocking both the mother's reputation and the absurdity of the situation. Even in death, Diogenes' wit persisted. One story claims that when asked how he wished to be buried, he replied, "Throw me to the wild animals, I'd like to give them a feast." When asked if that wasn't undignified, he said, "Just place a stick near me to keep the animals away." When it was pointed out that he wouldn't be able to use the stick if he was dead, he quipped, "Then why should I care what happens to me when I'm dead?" His complete indifference to death and material things was a final testament to his cynicism. Legends about Diogenes abound. Some say he walked around naked. Others claim he ate raw meat in the marketplace to show how humans are just like animals. One story even tells of him holding up a plucked chicken, saying, "Behold a man," to mock Plato's definition of humans as featherless bipeds. Diogenes lived to shock, challenge, and dismantle every social norm and philosophical idea he could. Diogenes' life was more than just a collection of bizarre moments. It was a radical critique of society and a rebellion against the conventions of his time. He lived life on his terms, caring nothing for what others thought. Some saw him as a crazy cynic, but others saw a genius who exposed the ridiculousness of the world around him. One thing's for sure, Diogenes was and still is one of the most unforgettable figures in history.